Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Sueur City Council meeting dated October 9, 2023. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, you all received your packets via mail and also email over the weekend. Had an opportunity to look them over at this time. I will entertain any motions to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Huntington. Any other discussion, comments, and concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public hearing. This is item number 4A, 2023 delinquent accounts and utility assessments. Mr. Roby, you want to give us a quick summary on that, please?
I would, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'll invite Finance Director Graff up to the podium. I'll just walk through the steps here and then let Mr. Graff take over. So tonight we'll have a public hearing, which City Council called on this fall. This is an annual process. I'll have Mr. Graff summarize the 2023 delinquent utility account process status, and then we'll look for City Council for a motion to open the public hearing. We'll hear from any members of the public who are here tonight on the topic. Once the public has had their opportunity to speak, I would look for a motion from City Council to close the public hearing, and then City Council can engage in any discussion they would like. There is no other formal action tonight other than what Mr. Graff will discuss. I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right. Thank you, Administrator Roby. Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just kind of go over the process that we have done so far. In early September, we sent out 438 letters totaling a little over $581,000. We ran an update here last week, and that $581,000 has decreased to just a little under $454,000. That's pretty similar to what happened last year in terms of the amount of decrease. The dollars in total are higher than last year, as we mentioned before, basically because in 2022, we did not have late fees for the entire calendar year, which we have in 2023. So that's kind of the reason that the dollar amounts are up. The number of letters and such are relatively the same. That's the status as to where we are now. I would expect, based on last year, that this number might come down another $75,000 to $100,000 based on what's happened in the past. But it's probably, south of $400,000. So, any questions on any of that?
Thank you, Mr. Graff. I'm kind of impressed with what in 1 month we were able to bring in $128,000 in insufficient funds. I'm delighted to hear that. Do more letters, when's the assessment? Is that in the May taxes, Joe?
Yes, so at the November 13th City Council meeting, Mr. Graff will be back and we'll have a final list and we'll ask for City Council approval to assess those to property taxes. Mr. Graff then sends that list to Sueur County, who then adds it onto the 2024 property taxes, and they're added to the property tax bill. And then depending on when people pay the taxes, it'll show up on their final property tax statement that people will get in usually March, I believe, in the final, or late February, early March, when the final property tax statement comes out, and it's usually due in May and October in 2 equal payments, or people have been escrowed or whatever, but it's added to their property tax bill.
And just to be clear, there's a lot of municipalities who use the mechanism of just simply shutting off utilities when there's absence in these payments. And this is I feel like a cleaner and more healthier way to do things. And this is something we've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years.
That's correct.
I do have 438 letters. That's over 25% of the households in the city. Depending on what you look at,
You know, if you look at the community center study, they use 1,600. If you go to the 2020 census, they use 1,700. So you do 1,650 split. 438 letters is 26% of the households in this city. And I do have a question on the wording, Brian. As you go through this, it says account holders. But when you get down to the third paragraph, sit with property owners. Now, an apartment dweller is not a property owner, correct?
Correct.
So I guess my question is, instead of property owner, it should be account holder, should it not?
I don't think so.
We use them, I would say they, for the purposes of this exercise, they're used interchangeably. So
Fair enough.
ultimately, it is the responsibility of
That's
the
fair
property
enough.
owner.
And, you know, again, without the late fees, but I can recall, I think it was January or February of this year, when we went through the, you know, his first blush at the monthly spend. And I questioned $254,000 unaccounted for. And you corrected me immediately, Joe, and said, those are the uncollected utilities. Well, that's 254 to 581 in 9 months. We don't have an agreement with MMP to not pay our bill to them when we get paid, correct?
Correct.
So this is coming right out of, and it's getting dumped on the balance, I'm assuming somewhere, the balance of the individuals that do pay their bills. Because it's got to come from someplace.
Well, and it will in the spring when those property taxes are.
Right, but if you're a renter, you're not going to get the property taxes. You're only going to see it on the homeowners. What percent of these, do you have any idea? What percent are homeowners versus apartment renters?
Mike, and we're going to address that. I think that's what Mr. Osigini is going to talk about tonight. He's a renter or a property owner who rents his property out. And we're gonna hear what he has to say tonight, but there is a part of responsibility that the utilities are sent to the property owners, and it's their responsibility to screen their tenants. It's their responsibility to collect these bills from their tenants. It's their responsibility to work out a way that they can either rent or collect these utilities along with their rent with their tenants. But we're going to address that a little more as we move into the.
I'll bring it back up.
There is, I mean, and there is some. I mean, I don't have a number to give you. I mean, we can figure that out.
Yeah.
I'd say a bulk of these, the dollars are probably not in total. I mean, for each individual property, it might be a decent amount if the tenant hasn't been paying their bill all year for several months, but I'd say a majority of them are probably not in that category, but we can figure that out.
Is it fair to say that a healthy majority of this figure is electricity versus water?
I would.
No, I would say a good majority of these are just bills that aren't paid. And that just kind of follow a cycle of they just pay it via their property tax.
Right,
Which
electricity is going to be a higher portion of your city utility bill than the water.
It doesn't happen, neither one of them are paid.
I get it.
But depending on the usage, it might be, it's probably higher than water usage, yes. But wastewater is also makes up a significant portion of, I would say, an average bill. And so, yeah, so earlier, just in reference to your comment earlier about the $254,000, I think it was that you had asked about, and it was a large expense that we had, and was the write-off from, we had written off $254,000 or whatever that exact amount was, right? So we wrote that off at the end of the year, we write it off, and then we collect it back with the property taxes.
Right.
So we write it off and we collect it. So real time, day to day, we are not collecting those dollars. We're accruing an unpaid balance essentially.
Sure.
And then we effectively send it to bad debt. But instead of utilizing a collection agency or revenue recapture or some other program or shutting utilities off, we send to the county. The county collects all of it back for us. At least anyone who's paying their property taxes.
I get the process. My point was that it went from 254 to 580.
Well, just to,
And that's the penalties, I understand.
no, some, but like apples to apples to, if you want us, the 581, that was 481 last year at those points in time. So like last year we started at 481 in early September. It was down to 330 at this particular hearing last year. And then the final number ended up being the 250 the 254. So this year we started 581,000. So we started $100,000 higher,
Right.
which I would say is penalties. We had 12 months worth of penalties this year versus 8 the prior year. So that is a healthy percentage. And then it's come down from 581 to 453, which is approximately the same ratio as last year. And I would expect it will be at 375. So it would be more of like the 254 to 375 would be my guess of the still a big
Yeah,
jump.
I was gonna say, that's 40% increase.
Yeah, but there's technically a 50% increase in the months of penalties, 12 versus 8, but that makes a difference.
It's huge. It's huge.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion to open the public hearing. So moved. Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Schrader, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Open hearing is now open. And we have Mr. Mastavini that would like to address the council. Welcome. Essie, if I may call you Essie?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Thank you.
I live in city of Sueur. I have about 14 property, 4 located in the Sueur. I have property in the center, Montgomery, and Waterville. And the only city that I do have problem with utility is city of the Sueur. And they all have problem with collecting from especially the rental property. I don't know.
I want to back you up real quick. I don't want to interrupt you, but you said the only city you have a problem with is the city of Sueur. You mean collecting from your tenants?
Collecting, yeah, not in the city
Thank you.
council or the city,
Just wanted to
but
clarify.
collecting utility from my tenant to pay their bills on time. And I had discussion with city of Montgomery, with the administration over there, and somehow they came up with the idea. I told them that when I don't have no enforcement, the tenant tend to say, well, I'll pay my bill next month. And some of them are really struggling and to pay their bills. They barely could pay their rent as of now. And some of their complaint in the city of Missouri was the fee. One of my tenants, right now I have, I think overall about $9,000 unpaid utility to the city of Missouri. And one of them is $5,000, and she doesn't have a job, and she got 3 kids, and she needs a place to live. And she said about $200 a month fee alone that she has to come up, and she can't afford it. And that's why she's not paying her utility. And she's going all over in the county and anywhere that she could get help to pay this thing. And I done this evicting people. Last year, I evicted one from 203 and she left. I got another one, same situation I'm in. And this eviction costs dollars. The lawyers charge $200 an hour. By the time we get somebody evicted, it costs $2,000 to get them out of there. And then they don't pay their last few months of the rent. So it's enormous to evict somebody. So back to what I'm here for. What I want, or what should I ask, if the city help us to collect these money for the city? Because we know at the end of the day, they're gonna add it to the tax and we gotta pay. So we're in it to collect these because we don't wanna pay as a landlord. For us, if we pay next year, our rent is gonna go up 10, 15%, or whatever that we lost. We're a business, we're in it to make money. One way or another, we get our money out. So the only way to do it, to increase the rent, or get out of the town that we can't do business. I seriously thinking selling my property and go somewhere else that I don't have to deal with this every November that comes. And I assure you that every time I get a bill from the city of Sueur, I email or I text to my tenant, you are behind your utility. You need to bring them up to date. And they go, okay, I'll go pay. And they come and pay $100 that they said they pay. And I called the city clerk. I said, this such and such came and paid. Yes, they did. How much? $100. But she owes $4,000. $100 doesn't do anything to it. But then I can't evict her because she already trying to pay. So it's not a clear cutoff. You're not like the rent. You're behind the rent 2 weeks or a month. I go 5 with the lawyers and they're gonna come get you out. So it becomes really hard for us to push this utility bill with my tenant, at least for me. I don't know, everybody else have different idea what they do. But the way I did it with the city of Montgomery, and they send warning. And they, until they get a warning that you don't pay the utility, we're gonna shut off your utility. And I know about the state of Minnesota rule, call rule from October to April. But from April to October, we could cut off these people electricity or whatever. And I understand about the water that you can't go turn it on and off. There's a lot of mechanical in there. You might break the knob that turns on and it's more expensive to fix it. But somehow what I'm asking to do something, give us some sort of lay that we could force these people to pay the utility. As long as they're not forced that something's gonna happen, they're not gonna pay. And it comes last month of October and November, and they hustle and beg Salvation Army, County, Sueur County, and everywhere to get this money. And even from me, I've been paid, last year I paid 2 of them because, to be honest with you, I don't want them to go on my taxes because that create a headache for the accountant. What is this? Where this go? Why are you paying this for your tenant? How are we going to separate this? And how much you did pay? So these issues that I do have with and I'm trying to solve it. And last year I paid over 3,000 or 4,000 added to my taxes. And I prevent some of them by helping them, by delaying them, by saying, okay, I'll go pay some. So, but the city of Montgomery, what they did, we have license over there. They send a letter that said, if your tenant doesn't pay the utility, we're gonna revoke your rental license. So I send that to the tenant and go, okay, they taking my license, rental license away. And if I don't have a rental license, that means I can't rent a place to you and you need to move out. And simple as that.
Is that what you would rather?
No, I wish there was easier way. Believe me, I love my tenant. I try to help them best I can. But at some point, it comes November, it's gonna go on me.
I understand. That's we're running out of time here. I usually give everybody 5 minutes. You've pleaded your plight very well, and we appreciate you communicating that to us. First and foremost, we don't want you to leave town. We want you to remain in this community. And
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Your presence in this community is important, not only with your tenants and your renting, but also with your business. I've worked with you over the years. We appreciate that. Secondly, we're very sensitive. We're very sensitive to people with children and their struggles and their challenges with paying bills. I know that the administration here has worked with families when they've struggled to pay some of these electrical bills. There's some things we can do to sit down and work out a payment plan to get them caught up. They need to come forward, and they need to show that they want to try to reconcile things. And I think that's why it's important to communicate to the city. And there are resources out there, whether it's the county or the state or wherever, they've got to reach out for those resources. I guess finally, Essie, I think in the future, you've got to be maybe a little more transparent with your tenants and know exactly who you have coming in and the challenges you're going to have with them when they come in with these types of things. And I think if it were me, Essie, if I had a tenant that was even so much as $500 to $1,000 in the rear with their utilities, I think a red flag would go up quite quickly with me. And
excuse me, interrupting you. We do have process for selecting our tenants, and they are very good. And again, some, as you said, fall in the crack, and this is before what we started. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
And that's okay. But I think we've got some policies here as far as the way we collect these utilities, these fast utilities that are, it's a sensitive way to do it. It's a fair way to do it. It's not as harsh as shutting off utilities. And I feel good about the way, this administration works with families that are struggling. So I think as we move forward, Essie, I think it's important that you and your tenants communicate with the city rather closely and move ahead as far as trying to keep up with these bills. I know getting down by $9,000 is a little astronomical.
It is.
It is. It's important for you to know what you have coming in.
Again, can you point, who should I talk to? I've been calling the city. To be honest, I'm not familiar that the appointed person that I could come in. I go, okay, this family having a problem paying utility.
Well,
now, how could we go about helping
as
this
we
person?
move forward, and we're going to wrap this up, Essie, if you don't mind. But
sure.
As you move forward, hopefully we can, rectify this problem you have now. But as you move forward, when you have new tenants come in, I think it's very important you know exactly what it is you have coming into your property. As far as I would check credit ratings, I would check past landlords. I would do background checks as you move forward. Then it might alleviate a little bit of the trouble you have.
Sure.
And I'm sorry you do have these troubles.
No.
My heart goes out to you. But you're a sharp businessman. I know you pull this together.
Sure.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any closing comments from our administrator?
Just for point of clarification for city council and anyone who is paying attention, Sally, who works in our utility billing department, Sally's our primary contact. If Sally's unavailable, then Mr. Graff is our contact. And Sally does work very closely with the county and with Minnesota Valley Action Council and other entities to work with families who need assistance. Sally's very, very well versed in that world. So if there's money to be had for people who are struggling, Sally's very good at finding it.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
I wish you well with everything.
Thank you.
I wish you luck. With that, I don't think there's any other comments. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader, seconded by Mr. Sullivan. Any discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to consent agenda. All items.
I thought we were going to be able to discuss this. That's what was said.
If there's any other discussion, I kind of closed the public hearing, but yeah. No, public hearing is closed.
Right.
If you have let's put it this way, if you have a closing comment.
I would like to know why or what is the incentive for these delinquent account holders to pay their bill? What is it
There are two things. One is there's a 5% penalty that's added each month.
that they don't pay?
Correct. And the second incentive is if you own the property, whether you pay it, you pay it now, or you will pay a late fee and then you'll pay an additional fee when it's assessed to your property taxes.
In Mr. Essing's case, his tenants, through no fault of his own, aren't paying. What recourse does he have?
So
None.
for landlords, so we do have, I mean, we have a number of property owners in town who rent out, who rent out space, whether it's homes or apartments, and other landlords use different mechanisms. There are several landlords in town who base their rate, the rental rate, to include utilities, and as the property owners.
Or they could put it in the lease. If you fall X
Correct.
amount behind, you're out.
Exactly. And so we have, unfortunately, there are some landlords who, Mr. Muskegee referenced it. We look at this list, there are some consistent names year to year on this list. And I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine if you looked at the structure of the rent or the lease agreements, compared it to that list, that the landlords who either have it in their lease or have it built into the rent are less likely to show up on the list, because the property owner themselves, the landlord, controls completely that bill. And what we.
So I understand this, and all of the apartment buildings in this town, each apartment does not have a separate meter?
A lot of them will, yes, but depending on the way the landlord wants the billing arrangement, the property owner will get at least a copy of that bill.
Okay.
If they aren't the only one to receive it. So people could receive a bill that has several meters on it, and the property owner will just take care of the entire bill themselves, and then pass along the cost to their tenant, either in the form of a direct payment or a direct bill to them, or in the rent.
I know that when I rented an apartment in this town, this was many years ago, but I got my name on an electric bill.
Yeah.
Now, water and heat were included, but the electric bill had my name on it.
Yeah.
And you paid it.
And I did pay.
That's
To
the
me, there's
problem.
no
That's the
incentive
problem.
in this system
It's as simple as that. That's the problem.
that
So
would cause people or push people to have to pay their electric bill. I mean, if they just kept saying no, they're not gonna go anywhere. It's just gonna keep building up. It leads to the question, why did we pull the shut-off threat? Why did that happen? I understand, the kids and this and that, but within the statutes of the state, why could we not reconsider adding that as an incentive to try to drive this number
I
down?
might be speaking out of turn, but I think the collection rate is better assessing it from the county than it is, because once you stop the service, there is absolutely no recourse, and they are not going to pay it. But once it goes on to the city property tax, if you want to sell that property or you want to continue to maintain that property, you've got to pay the county taxes.
When we voted to switch from shutting off, it was because it was costing the city way more money to go and shut utilities off, start utilities up, people would come in and pay their bill, then a month later they were back delinquent, you let it stack up, and then you go back and shut that property off again. It was costing the city way more money and time and equipment and fixing things than it was worth doing it this route. And at the end of the day, if it's an apartment, if it's a house that you're renting, if you're renting that house, your responsibility for that line coming into that house.
You pay the taxes.
You own that property, that's your responsibility. How you divvy that out to your tenants, that's your deal.
Mr. Graff, you have something you want to share?
No, I was just gonna say that they do get their own bill with their name on it. There's a copy that goes
That's what
to
I thought. I mean, that's what happened.
both the renter and the landlord, so they each get one.
It just seems to me that this is so open-ended mean, it's just
It
gonna
goes
go
the
in
other way.
perpetuity.
At the end of the year, though, it settles up because you have to pay it.
Would argue that it doesn't, because it went from $250,000 to anticipated.
Right, and then it'll go on the
300.
property taxes next year and it'll get paid up, or the folks will get.
Right,
proposed.
but it's the incremental increase year over year that pot's just gonna continue to get bigger.
But there really wasn't an incremental increase. It's literally our costs have gone up and we've added fees. So that number really isn't that much different than it was the last 5 years.
Thank you.
It's a delayed, it's a collection, but it's a delayed collection, and our collection rate, with the assessment process, I can't quote the exact percentage, but it's very, very high because it is tied directly to property taxes. And the risk of not paying your property taxes is forfeiture. And while we do have some forfeiture properties in town, and we do have properties in town that are delinquent on their property taxes, the risk to that is much greater than the risk to a property owner of not paying the utility bill, maybe getting shut off, being able to pay the bill, come back in, maybe you're delayed or you're late 2 months later. And don't get me wrong, I know there are some days when staff wish that they could just shut it off, because the efforts that staff go through to work with
I believe every bit of it.
they will go to the ends of the world to find every nickel they can. And that's a lot of time and energy that's spent on those customers, only to have some of them end up on this list. And the process before, during shutoffs was, they could shut off, maybe they would move, abandon the house or sell the house, and then if there's an uncollectible amount, the city would send those balances to a revenue recapture or potentially a collection agency.
Sell the debt.
Right, and then, we're getting 50% of a return on the debt that we do collect, and then a lot of it just goes uncollected. And so I think, and also just to answer your initial question, one of the reasons that city council, I think the city council made that decision, but then COVID happened and we weren't allowed to shut anyone off at any point during the year. And then we came out of COVID, and I was here for that period of time, and council had the opportunity to evaluate it and say, frankly, it's a more humane way to do it. And if we can ultimately collect the money at the end of the day when property taxes are paid, the delay is worth it to avoid the expense and potential risk of sending staff out repeatedly to properties to shut utilities off, to send notices every month that people are going to be shut off, to have additional people coming in and, because they got shut off, maybe paying part of their bill, maybe not paying part of their bill, then it's a much cleaner process, and our collection rate ends up being higher.
Okay, thank you. I think we spent a little more time on this, and I want to do it as a non-action item tonight, so we have closed out this public hearing. This is something we can pursue a little more, and then come January when we have some type of workshop.
November. We vote on it.
November when we vote on it. Thank you. So with that, I think we will move on to the consent agenda. All items on consent agenda are considered routine, have been made available to the city council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the council member or citizen so requests, which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered a normal sequence. Mr. Roby, you want to review these consent agenda items with us. I appreciate it. I'm reading that too fast and starting to sound like an auctioneer. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Only 4 items on tonight's consent agenda. The first is approval of city council minutes from the last meeting, September 25th. The second, to approve disbursements through today. Included in those disbursements are 4 items over $25,000. The first to MNPA for September's purchase power in the amount of $737,792.14. Second to Nielsen Blacktopping, the second payment application for the 2023 paving street maintenance plan, or seal coating rather, excuse me, for $73,062.35. The third, the city's September 2023 sales tax for Minnesota Department of Revenue for $50,830. And finally, to Short Elliott Hendrickson Incorporated, also known commonly to some folks as SEH, they're our airport engineer, for 2023 box hangar engineering, $49,100. Item C is Resolution R 2023-035, designation of the 2024 polling place. As most of you are likely aware, 2024 is an election year, and every year where there's going to be an election, City Council is required to designate where the polling place will be for 2024, and that's designated as City Hall again in 2024. Item D, personnel action, hiring of a seasonal Zamboni driver for the ice arena.
Thank you. Any questions for our city administrator on these consent agenda items? None. With that said, I will entertain a motion to approve. Can I double that? Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. I don't think, Mr. Tui, you can see anything. Thank you. Nothing for public comment tonight. That'll take us into the city administrator's update. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few items tonight. First, another reminder to City Council that this Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon at the middle school, high school, will be the Future of the City Forum hosted by the Planning Commission. This is the annual sharing of the citywide survey results and discussion about the comprehensive plan. Zoning Administrator Justin Nielsen has been working with the Planning Commission to set the details. We'll start in the auditorium at the high school at 10 a.m. with a short presentation of survey results and some comp plan discussion, and then we'll move to the media center. We're estimating around 10:30 to noon in the media center at the high school for some breakout sessions on streets, parks, recreation, public safety. Superintendent Wagner will be there to discuss the school district as well. So I hope to see as many members of the community as we can at that. Last year, we had a fairly good turnout, and we've been doing some social media and other advertising to try to get the word out. So 10 a.m. this Saturday at the high school. The Airport Commission held a special meeting last week to discuss the use of capital dollars. The airport, the Sueur Municipal Airport, is owned and operated by the city of Sueur. A lot of its funding comes from the FAA, and as part of that, the Airport Commission is charged. It doesn't have decision-making capability, but the Airport Commission is charged with considering all things related to the airport and then bringing recommendations back to City Council. And the Airport Commission meets 4 times a year, and after its September meeting, decided to call a special meeting, which again was held last week, to discuss planning for future capital dollar usage. There were some one-time funds, significant funding from the FAA out of the federal infrastructure legislation that was passed. And there have been some discussion and debate over whether to construct new hangars at the airport or whether to do another capital project. The Airport Commission voted last week to recommend to the City Council that the capital plan for the airport be updated to remove hangar construction from the airport planning and replace the dollars that would have been spent on construction of 2 new hangars with a project that would build a parallel taxiway along the north side of the runway. The parallel taxiway would extend all the way to the western edge of the runway, and construction would likely begin in 2027. with a 5% local match, which means that the city will have to levy 5% of the total project cost to cover the construction of the taxiway. The taxiway was received a lot of note and mention for its safety benefits. So right now, if you have an airplane that's taking off on the runway, the entire runway has to be dedicated to that one plane. When the plane comes and lands on the runway, it has to taxi all the way down the runway before it can veer off to go to one of the hangars. If you have a travel taxiway, in theory, you can have one plane taxiing, either leaving or coming in, and another plane landing at the same time. So you can improve the traffic flow and make the runway traffic safer. That recommendation, with the details from the engineering team, will be presented at the City Council's October 23rd meeting.
Joe, do you know what the vote was on that?
It was unanimous.
Thank you.
And this comes, there was a lot of discussion over the last 3 meetings now with the Airport Commission over which direction to go on this. The Airport Commission and City Council had previously, prepared the airport for future hangar construction. So the North Taxiway Extension project, which is the last major project that was done out of the airport, prepared the airport for a slate of new hangars to be constructed. That land is still available for construction. So if someone were to call me tomorrow and say, hey, I want to build a hangar, show me the available spaces, we have spaces available. The next step in that process was that the city would then construct 2 hangars, which could be rented out, because I don't have people knocking on my door to come build hangars, but I do have people knocking on my door to come rent hangar space, keep their airplanes at other regional airports and local airports who want to keep their airplanes here in town because they live in town. The Airport Commission's recommendation, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting, is to focus on improving the safety at the airport, with the hopes that improved safety at the airport and an improved or an augmented runway taxiway area will entice individuals who may want to build a hangar to build at our airport. Internally, staff continue to work on a number of potential housing development opportunities, looking at different land opportunities, discussions with developers. So nothing of note to discuss right now, but staff continue to work actively on it. We had an RPAC meeting last week, and there'll be a proposal coming to City Council at some point this fall to include in the budget, and it's not significant dollars, but I do want to call attention to it, to include in the budget for next year for Public Works, approximately $4,000 for the establishment of 6 primitive, meaning tent camping sites at River Park. So our Public Works manager presented to RPAC a plan that would establish 6 camping sites down at the park. We would then be able to rent them out. We would be able to track who's there, how long they're there. We would work in tandem with recreation to make sure that the park stays a safe and vibrant space. So that'll be coming to City Council this fall. The Veterans Memorial Task Force met 2 weeks ago now, and to discuss final plans for the design for the new Veterans Memorial to be placed in Legion Park. Quick refresher on that. The current monument that's in Legion Park will be moved to a new location and augmented. Currently, the monument is to those who were killed in action, and the Veterans Task Force, which is a joint task force between the Legion, the VFW, and other local veterans, has been working with city staff and Meg to design a new monument that would be in honor of all those who served. So we met last September 28th to discuss the final plans for that. The task force is actively fundraising for that campaign. We do expect that they'll be placing a sign at Legion Park at some point in the near future, indicating where the site is with a visual of what it would look like in hopes to disperse some additional fundraising opportunities. I want to thank the police department and the fire department for their help with last Friday's homecoming parade. The homecoming parade came back after a nearly 20-year hiatus, and the community response was very, very positive. They had the elementary schools involved, they had the high schools involved. Ryan and Lindsay were there holding signs, looking fabulous. Got an email today from the school thanking us for our help. The police and fire helped lead and shut down the roads and everything, and it was safe, it was very successful, and I heard from community members that it was a lot of fun, so I expect it'll come back next year. There will be one capital item that I want to discuss at the next city council meeting. Finance Director Graff and interim public services director Transberg and public works manager Schmidt and I have been meeting to discuss street maintenance going forward. So the city council's focus on street maintenance the last several years has been on curb and gutter repair and seal coating. And there's some, we're taking a closer look at what kind of work we might be able to do in-house, especially along the curb lines. I don't know if anyone's driven down Smith Street in the last 5 years, but it's a little rough. And there are a few streets that we could probably do some work in-house with the crew that we have. They're very, very capable operators. And so we're looking at some options for pursuing the acquisition of some equipment that we could utilize to do some street repair in-house. And then with that, we could do some street repair along stretches of roads before we go and seal coat them. So we could go through, make some significant repairs ourselves, and then do seal coating and curb repair that needs to be contracted out the following year. Instead of contracting out for so much, we can do some work in-house. So we've been having a lot of conversations around that. And there's a piece of equipment that we demoed about a month ago now that will allow us to reclaim some of the asphalt that is really challenged in town and do some of that work in-house instead of contracting out for a lot of it. And finally, this Thursday at 10:30, I'll be going down to South Central College to share the results of our rec facilities master plan with members of the Minnesota House of Representatives Capital Investment Committee. I'm hopeful that the mayor schedule will allow him to join me for that. The event, I've learned, is not open to the public. But I will have 10 minutes to share with the Capital Investments Committee why the community center is deserving of state bonding funds. So the goal of the legislature, 2024 will be a bonding year for the legislature. They didn't pass a bill in 22, so they passed a bill in 2023. 2024 is the next bonding year. And so as part of their bonding tour that they do every 2 years, the House of Representatives is going around the state. They're making a stop in Mankato. And so Thursday morning, I'll go down and give them a presentation and share with them all the great things that we think need to be done to the community center, share all of the elements of community engagement that we use throughout the process, the critical impact that that facility has not only on our community, but also the regional impact. If we look at the hockey program alone, it draws from 10 different schools. It's across, I think, 7 different counties that rely upon the community center to provide the Minnesota River Bulldogs hockey program. So that's this Thursday morning. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Mr. Ruby. I do hope to join you on that trip down to Mankato. We'll see how my schedule looks for right now. So excited about that. And if you've ever pleaded a case in your life, Joe, this is the one we need you to plead for the city. So thanks. And you've got 10 minutes to do it. Okay, good. Any questions for our city administrator?
Status of the orange fence around the water tower.
Yes, fair question. So the Monday evening following the last council meeting on the 25th, we reached out to the contractor and shared with the engineer, shared their opinion on it. The contractor has agreed that the silt fence around the water tower is not likely to provide a significant benefit, can be removed, and they are sending out a contractor this week to remove it.
Thank you.
Third question. Thank you, Mr. Drew.
And I'll be checking.
Yes.
With that, we will move on to the regular agenda at this time, which takes us on to item 8A. It's personnel action, public service director, and water and wastewater manager. Mr. Roby, you want to review that with us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I know I've shared updates as we've gone along, but and personnel actions, typically we put on the consent agenda, but because this involves a director level position, I wanted to put it on a regular agenda tonight in case there's any additional discussion. We have concluded our public services director interview process. It was a competitive process. We received 9 applications. We interviewed 3 candidates for the director position over the course of 2 different rounds. At the end of the second round, the candidate that I recommended, was prepared to recommend to City Council, was our current water wastewater manager, Foster Transfer. An offer was extended to Mr. Transfer and he accepted. Foster's been with the city for over 5 years now, serving as a water wastewater manager. He has a background in public works and streets maintenance. He has a lot of great ideas. He's very passionate about the city. And was our top candidate in the pool. And so my recommendation to City Council is to approve the hiring of Foster Transberg as the city's next public services director. I'm piggybacking the next hiring on this. So should council approve the hiring of Mr. Transberg, that leaves us without a water and wastewater manager. And so I visited with the director team about the process of hiring a water wastewater manager. Pete Burns, who currently serves as our water and wastewater working supervisor, has been with the city for 16 years now, and has twice now for the city served as the interim water wastewater manager. Is a preeminently qualified candidate to serve as the manager. And so my recommendation to City Council is should you approve the hiring of Mr. Transfer, that you also approve the hiring of Pete Burns as the water wastewater manager.
Any council members have a question for Mr. Roby regarding this action? If not, we'll do these in separate motions. I do know both of these technicians quite well. I have nothing but confidence in their abilities and they'll do quite well, I'm sure. So the first motion is to approve the hiring of Foster Transberg as Public Service Director. So moved. Thank you, Mr. Tui, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the approval hiring of Pete Burns as Water and Wastewater Manager. So moved. Thank you, Mr. Huntington. Seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations to those 2 gentlemen. Moving on to the 2022-2023 council goals and updates. Mr. Roby, you want to kind of review those with us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick summary here. In early 2022, actually my predecessor was still here at the city. The city council held a workshop, as it does, from time to time, to discuss its formal goals. There were some goals from the previous session that were considered to be carried on into the next round, and some new goals were proposed. In July of 2022, City Council acted upon those goals and actually added 2 more for a total of 12 goals. Those were adopted in July 2022. The City Council establishes goals to serve as generally a guide, and if nothing else, as a guide for me. Sitting twiddling my thumbs any day in particular, I look at the goals list and say, okay, what do we need to work on next? And so it's a guide overall for City Council to say, okay, what are our priorities? What are our focus areas going to be for the next 2 years? And you establish those goals and staff work on them. And as you know, from time to time, it's reasonable for council to take a look at those goals, see how we're doing on those, see if we need to amend any of them, see if we need to completely scrap them because circumstances have changed, things like that. It's been a little over a year now since council adopted these goals, and so I thought it would be appropriate to do a quick status check on the 12 goals that are for city council. And there's no action requested tonight. I'll walk through each of the goals individually, give a little status update. If there are any questions, you can certainly ask me. And then my recommendation is the city council would look to call a work session early 2024 to do a final review of these goals and determine next steps for establishing a new set, if that's what council wishes to do. If there are no questions, I'll just.
Are you gonna go through them all?
I'm gonna go through each one.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, no, you're fine. So overall, several years ago, council established some overarching themes to what their goals should tie back to. 3 major umbrellas: 1, fiscal responsibility; 2nd, customer service; and 3rd, planning for the future. Within those 3 paradigms, there are 4 focus areas that come straight out of the comprehensive plan: land use, infrastructure, transportation, and parks, recreation, and open spaces. To achieve those 4 focus areas, or to work toward improvements and planning those 4 focus areas, there are some strategies that come again from the comprehensive plan to work toward them: volunteerism and philanthropy, partnerships, official controls, which is our city code and zoning, capital improvement plans, economic development, housing, parks and trails. You'll know there's a lot of focus on the comprehensive plan here. This is not new. Ever since the adoption of the comprehensive plan, it has been city council's goal. I'm going to use that term a lot, I apologize. City council's overarching goal to look through the lens of the comprehensive plan whenever it considers an action, no matter how mundane that action is or how great that consideration is, to look through the lens of the comprehensive plan. So all of the goals that were established and adopted in 2022 call attention to various aspects of this, right? Some reference partnerships, some reference economic development, some reference transportation, and so on and so forth. So the first goal, and that's where at the bottom of each of these boxes, you'll see a series of numbers and letters and Roman numerals, and those refer to a focus area or a long-term goal or a strategy. Goal number 1 was about the feasibility of acquiring electric service territory located within City of Sueur corporate limits. It's a well-known fact that within the municipal boundaries of the City of Sueur, the City of Sueur electric utility does not service all of that land. We serve most of it, but there are sections within city limits that another electric utility provides service to. Status check on this goal, it's in progress. We have evaluated, I would say in some ways we've completed it. We have evaluated the feasibility of acquiring electric service territory and have begun discussions moving in that direction. Specifically in the EDA land is a great example. The EDA owned land along 169 does not reside within the Sueur municipal utilities service territory. That service is provided by Minnesota Valley Electric Co-op out of Jordan, and has since for a long time. And so, and the land within city limits that's currently not provided by our own utility is all within that northern corridor of the city. So that's Country View Lane, sections of Dobbie Lane, sections of Woods Drive, and the EDA land, Wolf Motors, and those businesses up there on the hilltop. So we've been working internally on a proposal that would allow the city to acquire that territory, and we've been working with the city attorney on that. I don't have an update at this point for city council, but as soon as I do, I'll bring back to the city council. But this is something that we've been actively pursuing and discussing internally for about 12 months now. Goal number 2, this is involving the development and execution of a plan to plat and market shovel-ready business park lots on the EDA-owned land. So this is in progress, but I'm also going to say that this is changing direction. And the conversation I know we had at City Council when these goals were adopted was, this is kind of an odd goal in that the city doesn't own the land, the EDA owns the land. And so this goal is somewhat the EDA's, but in partnership with the city. The EDA took action at its last meeting to re-engage in purchase agreement negotiations with Cambria for the sale of this land. And so that process is playing out right now. We're working with the city attorney and Cambria on the purchase agreement. Should that be successful, then this goal changes. I'm not going to say it completely goes away, but I would recommend that City Council table this goal at that time, because this was from a period of time when City Council wasn't sure what would happen with that land if Cambria would buy it. If we should just develop it ourselves and sell the lots. So I would say we're hitting pause on this goal specifically while staff and the EDA work out negotiations with Cambria. Goal number 3, develop a fundraising campaign for the park project priority list. So the park project priority list grew out of the post plan, the parks open space plan that the city council adopted several years ago. To execute on the post plan was going to take a significant financial investment. In previous years, city council, when city council would consider the capital budget for the following year, they would have seen a line item for roughly $400,000 to $500,000 to be budgeted. In theory, the city could set aside $400,000 to $500,000 a year for several years, and then do everything it wanted to do as part of that post plan, or a lot of the things that came out of the post plan. That hasn't been the financial reality. And so one of the goals was, well, how are we going to fundraise to make these things in the post plan a reality? Status check on this is in progress. RPAC is not actively engaged in fundraising or building a fundraising campaign for the Parks project. The focus right now, though, is on a couple of different things that don't speak in huge financial dollars. I'm not talking about millions of dollars, but the work I referenced earlier around the Veterans Memorial and the fundraising efforts there are a key component to improvements that the post plan calls for in Legion Park. So for the vision and the post plan to become a reality, we need to do the appropriate thing with the current monument. And so that fundraising effort is underway, and city staff are actively engaged in working with the Veterans Task Force to that end, to provide whatever resources we can to help them raise money for the project. And the city's providing some in-kind support for that as well. We also annually submit at least one grant to the DNR for 2 years. It was for Legion Park to try to get some dollars that we could commit to Legion Park to make some improvements to playground equipment there. The last 2 bids were unsuccessful. In 2023, we submitted a grant to the DNR for the establishment of campsites at Mayo Park, which I know City Council discussed earlier this year. We also learned that that grant was unsuccessful this year. So we'll continue to pursue grants with the state and with private foundations wherever we can to make noted improvements toward the vision that the post plan called for. Goal number 4, coordinate a celebration event to commemorate the reopening of Main Street. This was done last August 18th, 2022. The city on the ribbon on the reopening of Main Street. I know it was casually, there was a soft opening in November of 2021. Thank you. And then in August 2022, we cut the ribbon on Main Street. And City Council at its last meeting approved closing out that project. So that goal is complete. Goal number 5, explore establishing a 5-year environmental sustainability plan. There's a lot to unpack with this one, and it's in progress. My plan is with some cementing of staffing in the public services department that we will be able to begin to make some progress on this. The first step in this will be to look at what our possible partnerships are here. We have a lot of resources. We can look at what some other municipalities have done. One thing that I know Councilmember Schluter is actively engaged in, and that I've been engaged in as well, is the Climate Smart Municipalities program through the University of Minnesota. It's a coalition of cities and higher education throughout the state. We meet once a month virtually to discuss what projects are happening, what cities are doing around sustainability, and generally around engagement in climate change efforts. And so this is an avenue that I can see leaning on pretty heavily as we move forward to discuss what we might do from a sustainability standpoint. I will say that from a sustainability and a fiscal responsibility standpoint, when the city is going to make improvements to buildings or vehicles or anything where we have a significant carbon footprint, we do look for any opportunity we can to use sustainable measures. Goal number 6, evaluate the city's emergency action plan and provide an updated document for city council. I know we discussed this last year, but the emergency action plan or the emergency operations plan for the city is rather outdated. Zoning Administrator Nielsen, who also serves as the city's emergency manager, has been working on this, and he's attended a couple of trainings this year with various groups to start to peel apart our emergency operations plan and rebuild it where we need to. The complexity here, and this is why it's taking a little bit longer than I hoped it would, is emergency operations planning is a much different world now than it was 10, 15, or 20 years ago, and for good reasons. If we were doing this exercise maybe 15 years ago, it would be much simpler from the standpoint that we would be able to control most of the moving pieces. We could build a document that says, yes, we know we can rely on this group, we can rely on this group, we can do this ourselves. What we have now is a situation where most organizations now of any size have their own emergency operations plan. And it gets to be an incredibly muddy Venn diagram where we have Ridgeview, which has their own emergency operations plan, and they need some things from us. We are going to ask for some things from them. The school district has their own emergency operations plan where they have contingencies that involve us. We have contingencies that involve them. We even have local churches that have reached out to us saying, hey, at some point in the past, the city had asked us to be an emergency shelter. Do you still need us? Because now the school is asking us if we can serve as an emergency shelter. And we've got Ridgeview that's asked us if we can serve as an emergency shelter. So it's grown into this thing where everyone is conscious of this. And we can't just dictate the rules of the game as much as maybe we could in the past, where we have to be much more nuanced about who relies upon whom in emergencies. So there's more to unpack than I had hoped there would be, but it's a good thing because it's on everyone's mind. So this is something that Justin and it's still a high priority, we'll still continue to work through. It just involves a lot more conversations and nuance. Goal number 7, plan a future of the city forum in 2023. This is great because it's happening this Saturday, so it will be complete after Saturday. But it's also important, it's not just low hanging fruit. This was very important because 2022 was the very first Future of the City Forum. The comprehensive plan dictates that it should be done. Responsibility of this was handed off to the Planning Commission. And so it was important to City Council not to let 2022 be a one and done for the Future of the City Forum. So the survey was conducted earlier this summer, and the event will be planned now, and then we'll take feedback from that. So I'm hoping it's very successful. I believe it will be. Goal number 8, comprehensive review and update of the City of Sueur personnel policy. The goal line has shifted a little bit as the state of Minnesota has implemented a couple of new things that we have to bake into our personnel policy. Cannabis is certainly one of them. Some of you are also maybe familiar with earned sick and safe time, which is now going to be a requirement for employers starting January 1st, 2024. So Ryan and Stacy and I have had a few conversations around this, what it means for our personnel policy, what things we have to put in place, how that earned sick and safe time will be different from PTO. And so we want to include all of that in personnel policy as well. My hope is to have an updated personnel policy in front of City Council by the end of this calendar year for City Council to approve. Goal number 9, review and update city code related to our utilities. So there's some language in city code that was identified a couple of years ago that needed to be updated, just based some things around who can access, who can tie into our sewer main and water main, what prerequisites there are. All the recommendations are done from a staff level. Those are going to be shared now with the city attorney, and the city attorney will make their reviews, and then we can bring those back in the form of ordinances, amendments to city code. Goal number 10, begin a recreation facilities master plan and 15-year recreation facilities financial plan. I would say part of this is complete. We've completed a recreation facilities master plan. The 15-year recreation facilities financial plan is not complete, and for 2 reasons. One is the focus was on the plan for the facilities themselves. And I would say what we have in place right now is we have a good operational model and debt model that helps us determine what the next X number of years looks like from a recreation standpoint. The biggest question mark right now with the finalizing the 15-year plan is what the facilities will look like in 15 years. If we're able to be successful in receiving funding for updates to the community center, that will then determine what our financial plan is. And we would look to implement a financial plan at that time when the facility is complete, or when the facility is developed and receives council approval. Goal 11, City Council review and approval of police department and fire department policies. This is something that Police Chief Tiki and I were working on, police department policies. It was contingent upon the completion of a process to digitize all of our police department policies, which has been done now. And so this is something I'll be taking up with Chief Steer when she comes aboard to get those policies in front of the City Council. Fire department policies. Those have been, the fire department has finalized theirs. I'm just working right now to tie them into the personnel policy. The key with both police and fire department policies, one is I want to make sure the city council is aware of all those policies, so that in the event you ever get a question, you know this is what the police department's policy is on XYZ, and this is what the fire department's policy is. The second key to those policies is making sure that they work in tandem with the personnel policy, because whether it's tenure on the force or it's discipline, we need to make sure that those policies are working in harmony with the personnel policy. And it is not unusual to have municipalities where the fire department policies will say, well, if we've got a problem with the firefighter, we're going to do X, Y, Z, but the personnel policy says you're going to do A, B, C. We need to make sure that the two are working together because at the end of the day, our firefighters are employees of the city of Sueur. So we're finalizing that, the marrying of those two right now. And goal 12, partner with the Sueur Municipal School District to establish normal meetings with set agendas to align community goals and communications. City Council has had one joint meeting earlier this year, last year, it's in 2023 now. In 2022 with the school board to discuss the proposed elementary school. City Council has not had a meeting in 2023 with the school board. This is certainly up to the wishes of the mayor and city council, the frequency at which they would like to have joint meetings with the school board. I would argue that the meeting that was held in 2022 and the subsequent support by city council of the project was maybe the most significant joint venture between the school district and the city in the past 20, 30 years. So I think a lot of headway was gained there. We maintain at a staff level, very, very close relationship with the school district, communicating with them on a very, very regular basis around whether it's projects or goals, things like that. But at a council and board level, we don't have a set schedule of joint meetings right now. And I think it would be wise to do one in 2024, unless the council wishes to do it yet in 2023, just to see where they're at. They can see where city council is at. But this is one of the key partnerships, and I think it, as I said, it really showed last year. We were able to work together collaboratively with the school on the planning of their new elementary. That was 8 straight months of negotiating and site plan review and city code review to get to the point we are now where they're building a new elementary school. So again, no action necessary. I just wanted to take the time tonight to listen to myself talk about our goals. And with that, we'll be quiet.
Thank you, City Administrator Roby. I think the council and the city administration is engaged in all of these goals. I think we all have a good understanding of them. I've looked them over quite closely again in the last several days, and I feel pretty good about where we're at right now. I feel extremely good about 8 of those goals. I'm not going to say which ones we're weak in. There's about 3 of them I say we're satisfactory, and there's maybe 1 or 2 that we could work on a little bit. But I think it's important we bring this to the forefront again. We just kind of go through this exercise once in a while and see where we're at. So I appreciate you updating us with that, Mr. Roby. Did anybody else have any comments or concerns regarding the goals? Thank you. I appreciate it. Moving on to items of report to report from your commissions. This is your opportunity, council members, to share what's going on in the community, what's going on in the commissions. And as always, we will start with Mr. Huntington.
I've got nothing, Mayor.
Nothing tonight. Mr. Schleter.
Since the last meeting, I did attend the Sueur County officials meeting on the 27th. Good discussions are had each time we have those meetings. So any other council members or staff that would like to attend, let me know and let you know where the meetings are. I had a Region 9 Legislative Committee meeting on the 4th, and upcoming activity, Region 9 full board meeting this Wednesday, Planning Commission meeting on Thursday, Region 9 Economic Development meeting on the 19th, and I hope to see a good turnout at the Future of the City Forum on Saturday.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Sullivan. Nothing tonight. Councilmember Swanberg.
Just an upcoming EDA meeting on Wednesday. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. And Councilmember Williams is absent tonight. I just want to end with, I appreciate you going through this exercise with these goals with us again, Joe. Thank you very much. It's important to stay on top of those. And I want to end with my condolences to Mr. Schleter. He lost his father this past week. I've been working with the family, and you have our condolences, and you have our support in the community also. So thank you for everything you do, Mr. Schleter, and we wish you well in the upcoming days as we pay respect to your father. So for that, I have nothing else. I will entertain a motion to dismiss the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.